Welcome, the anointed ones. Stop doubting yourself. Stop shrinking. Stop pretending you're ordinary. You didn't survive all of that by accident. You survived because you passed something most people never even realize they're taking. Let that sink in. Because this isn't one of those soft, motivational pep talks where someone pats you on the back and says, everything happens for a reason. No, this is deeper than that. Uncomfortable even. The kind of truth that makes you pause the video and stare at the wall for a second. Here's a fact most people never talk about. Psychologists have found that prolonged pressure doesn't just stress the brain, it rewires it. It changes perception, awareness, decision-making. In simple terms, people who endure more don't just get stronger. They start seeing life differently. Patterns faster, lies quicker, motives clearer. They don't think like the crowd anymore. Sound familiar? Because while everyone else seemed to be floating through life, distracted, entertained, carried by trends and noise, you were down here fighting invisible battles nobody clapped for. You weren't being celebrated. You were being stretched, tested, tempered. And the crazy part, nobody handed you a test paper. There was no announcement, no congratulations, you're in training. Life just kept throwing situations at you like, here, handle this. And before you could breathe, it added, oh, and handle this too. At some point, you probably looked around and thought, why does everything feel harder for me specifically? Did I sign some secret contract I don't remember? Because honestly, it felt personal, like life had your name highlighted. Meanwhile, other people were out here speed-running life on easy mode, and you're stuck on expert level with no tutorial. But what if that wasn't punishment? What if that was screening? What if every betrayal, every lonely season, every moment you had to figure things out without help wasn't random misfortune, but evaluation, not to break you, to reveal you? See, most people build their identity from outside noise, validation, attention, approval, trends. Take those away and they panic. But you? Those things were removed early, sometimes forcefully, sometimes unfairly. So you had to build something internal, something solid, something real. And here's where it gets almost funny in a dark, ironic way. While other people were busy trying to find themselves through retreats, podcasts, and aesthetic journaling, you were accidentally finding yourself through pure survival. No vision board, just pressure. Life really said, let's skip the seminar and go straight to character development. Efficient, brutal, effective. Now look at you. You read rooms differently. You trust your gut faster. You don't fall for surface-level nonsense anymore. You outgrew people without even trying. And half the time you can't even explain why you feel so separate. Like you're here but not fully of this place. That's not because you're lost. It's because you're waking up. Because here's the truth this video is going to unfold piece by piece. You weren't failing at life. You were passing tests you didn't know existed. And once you understand what you actually passed, once you realize what all that pressure was shaping you into, you're not just going to see your past differently. You're going to see yourself differently. And when that happens, everything changes. So stay with me, because by the end of this, you're not just going to nod along. You're going to recognize yourself in a way you never have before. Number one, you weren't unlucky, you were being observed. For a long time, you probably told yourself the same story everyone tells when life keeps hitting them from every angle. Maybe I just have bad luck. It sounds logical. Easier to accept, cleaner. Bad luck feels random, and random feels less personal. But your life was never random. Bad luck is missing a bus or spilling coffee on your shirt. Bad luck is not repeated betrayals, constant resistance, doors closing right when you're about to step through, and pressure showing up every single time you try to level up. That's not coincidence, that's consistency. And consistency means design. Look back carefully and you'll notice something strange. Every time your character was being shaped, life got heavier, not lighter. Every time you tried to cut corners, something blocked you. Every time you chose integrity over revenge, patience over chaos, discipline over drama, something inside you strengthened. Almost like your life kept saying, let's see what you're really made of. Not your talent, not your charm, not how good you look on social media, your core. Because skills can be taught, personality can be faked, image can be manufactured, but character only shows under pressure. So while other people were allowed to float through life half aware, you kept getting situations that forced you to grow up fast. You had to read people quickly. You had to stand alone. You had to make hard choices without guidance. Nobody handed you easy wins. It felt unfair at the time, like you were being singled out. In a way, you were, but not for punishment, for evaluation. Life wasn't trying to crush you. It was measuring you, watching how you responded when things weren't convenient, watching whether you'd lie, cheat, beg, or fold when things got tight. And here's the part most people miss. You kept choosing the harder, cleaner path, even when nobody was watching. That's not bad luck. That's quiet strength being confirmed. You weren't stumbling through chaos. You were being tested in private, and without realizing it, you kept passing. Number 2, you were never meant to fit. You were meant to disrupt systems. Every time you tried to blend in, something felt off. Not dramatic, not loud, just wrong. Like you were wearing clothes that technically fit, but never felt like yours. You could sit in the room, laugh with everyone, play your role, and still feel separate, like you were watching life happen instead of truly belonging inside it. At first, you probably blamed yourself. Maybe I'm awkward. Maybe I'm too quiet. Maybe I'm too different. So you adjusted. You softened your opinions, held back your thoughts, smiled when you didn't feel like it, tried to match people's energy just to keep things smooth. And somehow, even after all that effort, you still didn't click. Because the problem was never your social skills. It was your nature. Some people are built to adapt to systems. They slide in, follow the unspoken rules, and keep things exactly as they are. You weren't built like that. Your presence exposes things without you trying. Fake people get uncomfortable around you for no clear reason. Manipulators become defensive. Weak leaders feel threatened. Group dynamics get tense when you start asking simple, honest questions nobody else dares to ask. You don't even attack anything. You just exist honestly. And honesty disrupts environments that survive on pretending. That's why certain spaces quietly pushed you out, not directly. Just subtle resistance, exclusion, weird energy, opportunities drying up for reasons that never fully made sense. It wasn't rejection. It was friction, because systems built on ego, control, or fake harmony can't hold someone who sees too clearly. You notice what others ignore. You question what others accept. You refuse to play along just to keep people comfortable. And that kind of person doesn't fit. They shift the temperature of the room. The truth is, you weren't designed to blend into broken structures. You were designed to expose them, challenge them, and sometimes outgrow them completely. You didn't fail to belong. You were never supposed to shrink yourself just to make dysfunction feel safe. Number 3, your loneliness wasn't rejection, it was protection. For years, it probably felt like life was isolating you on purpose. Friends disappeared, family disappointed you, relationships didn't last, and every time you thought you had someone in your corner, the corner crumbled. That kind of loneliness cuts deeper than boredom or silence. It feels personal. It feels like the world turned its back just to test you. But here's the truth nobody tells you, that isolation was not a punishment. It was a shield. Life was keeping you safe from the wrong people long before you realized it. Every connection that faded, every friendship that ended, every relationship that couldn't survive the pressure wasn't random. Those people weren't ready for you. They weren't capable of carrying your energy or holding space for the person you were becoming. The very things that made them comfortable would have clipped your wings. They might have kept you small without you noticing. They would have demanded compromises that chipped away at your integrity and quiet strength. Life pulled you away from them to prevent you from diluting yourself. That's why, even though loneliness felt unbearable, it served a purpose. It forced you to rely on yourself, to trust your instincts, to build resilience without someone constantly validating you. It honed your ability to stand alone, to make decisions based on clarity rather than influence, and to navigate chaos without losing your center. The people who were meant to stay eventually did, but only after you had grown into someone who no longer needed constant approval, attention, or external reassurance. Loneliness didn't define you, it refined you. Every season of being alone was life saying, you don't need everyone's permission to exist fully. You don't need every hand to hold, every voice to cheer. The distance you felt wasn't rejection. It was preparation, protection, a way of letting you become untouchable in spirit before the world came knocking with distractions, drama, and pressures that could have broken you. Your solitude was never empty. It was a fortress quietly being built around your potential. And now, after surviving it, you are walking out of that fortress stronger, clearer, and entirely your own. Number 4. You developed depth because life refused to entertain you. While most people drift through life chasing distractions, trends, and surface-level pleasures, your life never gave you that luxury. The world never entertained you. There were no easy wins, no constant validation, no handouts or shortcuts that let you coast. Every moment demanded attention, focus, and careful navigation. Every choice came with consequences that mattered, whether you were ready or not. That constant pressure forced your mind inward. While others were busy scrolling, gossiping, or worrying about appearances, you were learning to observe, analyze, and understand patterns in people, situations, and even yourself. Your thoughts dug deeper, and your awareness sharpened. You learned that life doesn't just happen. It reacts to the choices you make, the integrity you hold, and the awareness you carry. You were forced to confront your own fears, your own weaknesses, and your own truths, because life refused to distract you with fluff. You had to wrestle with reality in its raw form. And the longer you did that, the more your mind became a tool instead of a passenger. The more you understood yourself, the less you needed the world's permission or its approval. The depth you developed didn't come from books or seminars or motivational speeches. It came from surviving in a world that didn't pause for you, from making sense of moments that should have crushed you but didn't, from noticing patterns others ignored, feeling emotions most suppressed, and questioning truths that others accepted blindly. This is why people sense something different about you. There's a weight to your awareness, an instinct that sees beneath the surface, a presence that doesn't need explanation. Depth like yours isn't common because most people never face the kind of persistent, unrelenting reality you endured. They are entertained. You were tested. They were distracted. You were refined. Life's refusal to entertain you was harsh, but it was precise. It forced you to grow faster than the world expected, to see clearer than most, and to carry a mental and emotional strength few ever achieve. Your depth isn't a byproduct of choice. It is the unavoidable consequence of surviving a life that demanded more than most could give. Number 5. You stopped seeking approval earlier than most people ever will. There comes a moment in life when you finally realize that nobody is coming to validate you, that nobody is going to tell you that you're enough, that your choices are correct. or that your struggles matter. For most people, this realization hits late, if it hits at all, and they spend their entire lives chasing external approval, begging for attention, and bending themselves to fit into other people's expectations. You didn't. You snapped out of it early. At some point, you understood that waiting for permission was pointless. Compliments, recognition, applause, even love, they were optional. They were nice if they happened, but they weren't required for you to keep moving. You started making decisions based on what was right for you, what made sense in your life, and what preserved your integrity, not on what would make others happy or impressed. That shift changes everything. When you stop seeking approval, you become untouchable in ways people don't notice at first. You stop being manipulated by praise or swayed by criticism. You stop over-explaining yourself or bending under invisible pressure. You act because it aligns with your internal code, not because someone else's opinion is dangling in front of you like a carrot. It also means you become unpredictable. People who survive off controlling others or feeding on external validation can't read you anymore. They don't know how to influence you with compliments or guilt or subtle pressure. That independence makes you quiet power. People notice it, even if they can't explain why. Stopping the need for approval doesn't make you cold or distant. It makes you focused, clear, anchored. You no longer drain energy trying to convince anyone you're worthy. You don't waste time being liked. You only invest where your energy actually matters. And that early break from dependence on external validation is what sets you apart. While the world chases attention, you have freedom. Freedom to grow, to think, to act, and to evolve without being weighed down by every opinion, every expectation, every social demand. That freedom is rare, and it's powerful. That's why you move differently from everyone else, even when they don't realize it. Number 6, your pain sharpened your perception. The experiences that hurt you the most didn't just leave scars, they rewired you. Every betrayal, every disappointment, every moment where you felt cornered or powerless became a lens. You didn't just survive, you became alert in ways most people never will. Pain didn't numb you. It tuned your senses. You started noticing details others overlooked, sensing motives before words were spoken, and reading situations with almost surgical precision. When people talk about intuition, they often make it sound mystical, like something you're either born with or not. But your intuition is practical. It's trained. It's developed from repeated exposure to unpredictability. When life repeatedly throws storms your way, your brain learns patterns. You start detecting dishonesty, manipulation, and hidden agendas instinctively because you've been forced to. Every misstep you observed in others became data. Every lie you endured became a lesson. Over time, your mind became a high-resolution radar, scanning environments, evaluating risks, and identifying truth in ways most people can't even comprehend. This heightened perception doesn't make life easy. It makes it precise. You can sense danger without it arriving. You can identify opportunity without it being obvious. You read people not because you study them, but because life has already trained you to. That's why you rarely get blindsided anymore. That's why certain situations that would fluster someone else leave you calm, calculating, and prepared. Pain sharpened your judgment, but it also gave you clarity. It stripped away illusions and forced you to see reality unfiltered. You no longer take actions based on emotion alone. You analyze, you strategize, you respond. You move through the world with a level of awareness that feels almost unfair to others. Your sensitivity to life isn't a weakness. It's the byproduct of survival and growth under pressure. The very experiences that broke people around you built a mental and emotional precision that's rare. That precision is part of who you are now, a permanent edge forged in fire. Pain didn't just happen to you, it upgraded you. Number 7, You lost people because you outgrew the version of you they preferred. Some people never truly loved you. They loved the smaller, more manageable version of you. The version that was quieter, more pliable, easier to control and less demanding of honesty. They loved the version that fit into their comfort zones without forcing them to confront anything about themselves. When you started evolving, growing, and claiming more of yourself, their love didn't just fade, it turned into resistance. Growth is uncomfortable for those who prefer the familiar. They don't want your transformation. They want the version of you that allowed them to feel secure, safe, and superior without challenge. So when you stopped shrinking to meet their expectations, when you started refusing to compromise your integrity for approval, when you set boundaries that were inconvenient to their desires, they left. Some walked away quietly. Others tried to push you back into the old version, guilt-tripping, criticizing or dismissing you. The loss hurt at first because human attachment runs deep. You might have wondered why relationships suddenly ended, or why people became distant. But that pain is actually proof of your growth. It's the signal that you've moved into a space others weren't ready for. They weren't losing you. They were losing access to the part of you that was no longer for sale, no longer bendable, no longer compromised. And that's the key. The version of you that stayed small was convenient. The new version of you is rare. It demands authenticity, respect, and clarity in every interaction. It refuses manipulation. It refuses control. It refuses energy vampires. And that scares people who are comfortable living in illusions. Losing people is painful, but it's also necessary. Every departure cleared space for relationships that align with your real self. People who don't just tolerate your growth, but recognize it and match it. Every person who leaves is a reminder that your evolution isn't optional. You weren't meant to stay small, and you weren't meant to be surrounded by people who could only love fragments of you. You outgrew them, and that's exactly what you were supposed to do. Number 8. You were trained to operate without applause. Most people only perform when someone is watching. Their actions, decisions, and even their courage are fueled by attention, praise, or validation. They need approval to feel worthy. You weren't built like that. From early on, life demanded that you carry yourself, make choices, and keep going without anyone noticing. There were no cheers when you did the right thing. There were no rewards for staying patient, kind, or disciplined. There were no congratulatory messages when you overcame challenges that would have broken someone else. And that's exactly why you became different. Operating without applause forced you to develop internal standards that don't depend on external validation. You learned to trust your judgment, hold yourself accountable, and move forward because it was necessary, not because someone was watching. That kind of self-reliance is rare. Most people falter when the crowd isn't clapping, when there's no audience, when the spotlight isn't on them. You learn to thrive quietly, consistently, and without recognition. It also means your discipline and consistency are unstoppable. You don't need someone to cheer you on to keep progressing. You don't need approval to stay committed. Your actions aren't performative, they're intentional. And that gives you a kind of power most people will never understand, because it doesn't rely on external forces. It's internal. This way of operating doesn't just make you self-sufficient, it makes you strategic. You can observe, analyze, and act without distractions, without being influenced by shallow praise or criticism. Your focus isn't split by who is watching or judging. You can move through life with clarity and precision, acting in ways that align with your goals and values, not the expectations of others. Being trained to operate without applause is a rare edge. It means your growth isn't conditional, your strength isn't performative, your character isn't borrowed from external opinions. You don't need recognition to know your worth. You act, you build, you survive, and you thrive. And all of it happens quietly, effectively, and powerfully, whether anyone notices or not. Number 9, you unknowingly passed tests you didn't even know existed. Most people live life thinking it's just a series of random events, a mix of luck, timing, and effort. But your life operated differently. Every choice you made, every moment you held back from reacting, every time you chose patience over impulse or integrity over revenge, was quietly being recorded. Nobody handed you a test sheet. Nobody told you what to focus on. And yet, somehow, the universe was grading you on things that mattered far more than grades, promotions, or public recognition. The tests weren't about success in the conventional sense. They were about character, about whether you could remain honest when lying would have been easier, whether you could stay kind when bitterness was screaming inside, whether you could walk away from people who didn't deserve your energy. Every challenge you faced, every betrayal, every disappointment, every moment you were pushed to the edge was a checkpoint in a system you didn't even realize existed. The remarkable thing is that you passed, quietly, without applause, without anyone noticing. You didn't even know you were being evaluated, yet your actions, choices, and resilience proved that you were ready for more than life was giving you at the time. You weren't measured by your wealth, your connections, or your achievements. You were measured by your ability to navigate chaos without losing yourself, by your ability to make hard decisions that aligned with your truth, even when nobody was watching. This is why your life feels different now. You feel the shift because the tests are over, or at least the most important ones. The moments that once seemed unfair, unbearable, or isolating were not random. They were the crucible that forged your strength, wisdom, and clarity. The people who doubted you, the situations that tried to break you, the seasons that demanded more than you thought you could give, they were all quietly confirming something you didn't even realize about yourself, that you were ready. You passed not because life gave you mercy, but because you carried the integrity, patience, and resilience required to do so. And that realization hits differently. It's not just relief, it's awakening. You weren't surviving by accident. You were passing the unseen ultimate tests of who you really are. Number 10, your silence became power because you stopped explaining yourself. There was a time when you felt the need to justify everything, every choice, every boundary, every action. You over-explained to avoid conflict, to gain approval, or simply to make others comfortable. You carried the weight of other people's understanding, assuming that if they truly knew your reasons, they would respect you. You didn't realize that constant explanation isn't clarity, it's giving power away. Then something shifted. You stopped explaining. Not out of stubbornness, not out of anger, but out of awareness. You understood that not everyone deserves access to your mind. Some people misunderstand on purpose. Some people manipulate by pretending they don't understand. Some people benefit from keeping you on a leash of justification. You quietly detached from that dynamic, and in doing so, you gained control over yourself in a way few ever experience. Your silence became more than peace. It became strategy. When you stopped feeding others' need for explanation, you became unreadable. People who thrived on controlling situations through influence, guilt, or expectation suddenly found they couldn't predict you anymore. You didn't have to argue to prove your point. You didn't have to convince anyone to accept you. You simply acted, and the world had to respond on your terms, not theirs. There's another layer to this power. It allows you to conserve energy. When you stop over-explaining, you stop wasting time, thought, and emotion on people who cannot or will not meet you where you are. You redirect that energy to growth, action, and focus. Your presence becomes commanding without words. Your decisions stand on their own, unquestioned, undeniable. The truth is Silence is rarely empty. When wielded intentionally, it becomes authority. It signals that your value isn't dictated by understanding or validation. It signals that you operate on your own terms. By choosing to stop explaining yourself, you didn't just protect your mind, you amplified your influence, sharpened your focus, and became someone who can move through the world with quiet, unstoppable power. Number 11. You don't crave attention because you've already met yourself. Most people spend their entire lives chasing validation, likes, compliments, recognition, approval. These things become their fuel. Without it, they feel small, incomplete, or invisible. You didn't develop that way. Somewhere along your journey, you stopped depending on the world to tell you who you were or how worthy you were. You looked inward, faced your own reality, and accepted yourself fully, even when no one else did. This self-possession changes everything. When you've met yourself, you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Your energy isn't wasted on seeking approval or being liked. You don't bend, adjust, or perform to fit into someone else's idea of what you should be. You act with clarity and confidence because your sense of value is internal, not borrowed from outside opinions. That freedom is rare, and it sets you apart from the crowd. It also makes you calm in ways that others struggle to understand. While people panic over perception, rumors, or attention, you remain grounded. You don't react impulsively to criticism or flattery because your sense of self isn't dependent on it. You can watch the chaos, manipulation, and noise around you without being swept in. Your focus is on what matters, not on how it's being received. There's an unspoken power in this independence. People who rely on attention are predictable. They can be influenced, distracted, or controlled through praise or pressure. You can't. Your mind is your own. Your choices are guided by purpose, clarity, and integrity, not by who is watching or who is clapping. By the time most people are still trying to find themselves through distractions, you've already done the work. You've faced the uncomfortable truths, confronted your weaknesses, and come out grounded, self-aware, and unshakable. You don't crave attention because your attention is already anchored internally. That's why you move differently. That's why your presence feels calm, rare, and undeniable. Meeting yourself first gives you a freedom most people never experience, and it makes everything else in life, relationships, work, growth, far more powerful. Number 12, you survived things that should have changed your heart, but didn't. Life threw moments at you that would have hardened most people. Betrayal, cruelty, disappointment, and injustice came in ways that should have left bitterness, anger, or distrust behind. The kind of experiences that make someone cynical, cold, or vindictive. And yet somehow you carried on without losing the core of yourself. You stayed aware, strong, and sharp, but you didn't let it turn you into someone you wouldn't recognize in the mirror. That's a rare kind of strength. Most people break under pressure and let life shape them into versions that are defensive or cruel. But you refuse shortcuts for emotional armor. You didn't numb yourself to survive. You didn't trade compassion for cynicism. You didn't let bitterness define the way you treated the world. Every trial, every injustice, every weight on your shoulders could have changed your heart. It didn't. Instead, your pain became refinement. It gave you clarity without destroying your capacity to feel. It made you aware of human nature, motives, and manipulation without erasing your empathy or your sense of fairness. You can see through lies, recognize false intentions, and navigate chaos with precision, yet you're not hardened or unreachable. You remain capable of trust, kindness, and connection, just on your terms, with full awareness. Surviving like this isn't just resilience. It's evidence that you were built to carry more than ordinary burdens. You learn to move through life without bitterness as a crutch, without resentment as armor, and without revenge as a motivator. That ability separates you from the majority of people who let pain dictate their behavior, cloud their judgment, or limit their growth. The truth is, your heart didn't stay intact by luck. It survived because of the choices you made when no one was watching, because of the strength you cultivated in silence, and because you refused to let your circumstances dictate the quality of your soul. You endured what should have changed you, and yet you came out sharper, clearer, and unbroken. That balance, strength without cruelty, awareness without paranoia, resilience without bitterness, is the mark of someone who has truly passed life's invisible tests. Number 13. Your life felt harder because you weren't allowed to stay average. Some people float through life with ease. Challenges feel minor. Doors open without much effort. Setbacks are temporary and rarely defining. That was never your path. Your life demanded more, required more, and pushed harder than most, not because you were unlucky, but because you weren't built for mediocrity. You weren't meant to settle, to coast, or to live comfortably within the limits most people accept. Everything you faced felt heavier, more complicated, more intense, and that intensity wasn't punishment. It was preparation. It forced you to develop strength, resilience, and skill that ordinary circumstances could never teach. While others were allowed to stumble without consequence, you were tested at every turn. Every challenge, every setback, every seemingly unfair situation was a weight placed on you because you had the capacity to carry it. Life assumed you could handle more, and it was right. This pressure shaped your mind and character in ways casual living never could. You learned patience when there was no time for it, discipline when no one was watching, and persistence when quitting would have been easier. You developed depth, awareness, and the ability to navigate complexity without losing yourself. Ordinary circumstances would never have forced that kind of growth. That's why you often feel out of sync with people who settle for comfort. They simply haven't been pushed to discover what you discovered by being stretched. The challenges you faced demanded more than superficial effort. They demanded transformation. You weren't meant to plateau, to coast, or to stay the version of yourself that would have been easy for the world to handle. You were designed to evolve under pressure, to refine your instincts, and to emerge capable of handling realities that would overwhelm others. Your life felt harder because the weight wasn't random. It was deliberate. You weren't being punished for failing. You were being trained to exceed average limits. The intensity you endured shaped you into someone rare, someone who can carry more, see further, and act stronger than most could even imagine. The difficulty wasn't a burden. It was proof that you were meant for more than ordinary living, and you survived it. Number 14, passing wasn't the reward. Discovering who you are is. All this time you've been conditioned to think success is measured by what you gain, money, status, recognition, or influence. That's the world's version of passing. But what you survived, what you endured, wasn't about achieving something external. It was about uncovering what's already inside you. The trials, the betrayals, the isolation, and the relentless pressure weren't designed to hand you rewards. They were designed to strip everything away until only the real you remained. Life dismantled illusions, removed distractions, and tested your integrity, often in silence, often without acknowledgement. Every moment that felt unfair, every situation that demanded more than you thought you could give, was a mirror showing who you really were. And now, after passing the unseen tests, you realize the reward wasn't material. The reward was clarity. The reward was self-recognition. The reward is finally understanding the depth of your resilience, the precision of your awareness, and the strength of your character. This is the truth that changes everything. Most people never get this. They survive chaos but never pause to see how it shaped them. They measure life by what they collect, not by what they discover within themselves. You, on the other hand, survived the extremes and emerged with a rare awareness. that the essence of your life isn't defined by circumstance but by your response to it. You passed because you proved above all else that you could maintain integrity, awareness, and strength under pressure. And that proof isn't something life can take away, nor is it something anyone else can give you. Discovering who you are is permanent. It can't be stolen, undermined, or erased. It's the anchor behind every choice you make, the clarity guiding every step, and the quiet power that separates you from people who never face life with the same honesty. Passing was only the first step. The real transformation is in recognizing the unshakable self that survived everything. That is the reward. That is the revelation. That is why nothing and no one can ever make you feel small again. Conclusion. Everything you've endured, every challenge, betrayal, and lonely season was never random. It wasn't bad luck, punishment, or the world singling you out. Every struggle was part of a larger, invisible design, tests of your character, resilience, and clarity that most people never even realize exist. You weren't just surviving life. You were being measured, refined, and prepared to discover the true depth of who you are. Every moment of isolation sharpened your awareness. Every betrayal strengthened your integrity. Every heavy season taught you to operate without applause, to trust yourself, and to carry your truth even when the world refused to see it. You didn't just pass these challenges. You evolved because of them. You outgrew people, situations, and systems that were never meant for your level of awareness. You stopped seeking approval because you met yourself, and in doing so, you became anchored, untouchable, and rare. You survived things that could have hardened your heart, but instead, they refined it. You carried your pain not as a burden, but as a tool that sharpened your perception and gave you clarity few will ever experience. The invisible tests you passed weren't about material rewards or recognition. They were about revealing the real you. And now, standing on the other side, you see it clearly. The reward wasn't something the world could hand you. The reward was the discovery of your own strength, power, and identity. This journey is proof that you are not ordinary, and nothing you went through was wasted. Everything shaped you, built you, and prepared you for the life only someone like you could live. You are aware, refined, self-possessed, and unstoppable in ways the world may never fully understand. Recognizing this is more than an awakening. It's a declaration. You have passed, and now you know who you truly are. If this video resonated with you and opened your eyes to the truth of your journey, make sure to show your support. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss content that reveals the hidden layers of life and power you carry. Like the video if it hit you at a deep level, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and comment below with your own revelations. Let's grow together, uncover more truths, and embrace the strength that lies within every one of us. You've passed, and it's time to step fully into who you really are. God bless you.